Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest.
Hello, Slava.
How you doing, Jonathan?
You know, I am probably funnier than I ought to be.
Yeah, we probably are. I feel like a one-armed man in a boxing competition.
Fighting for your life or fighting a midget?
What's funnier?
One horse-sized duck.
Yes. I want to fight a horse-sized duck.
Or 100...
Or a duck-sized horse. Punt that little...
Duck-sized horses. 100 duck-sized horses.
I'll take it. I can take him on with one arm. I'll just start kicking.
You're going to fight a horse-sized duck with one arm and two legs. Anyway, enough of that rabble-rousing. Let's move into what happened at the second half of Skysworn.
What didn't happen?
What didn't happen? Well, Orthos didn't back down, and Little Blue wasn't really around. Ethan kind of disappeared for the second half, really. You want to give us a quick rundown, or
what happened last time, or what's happening this time?
Yes and yes. But before we do, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a side quest.
Well, Jai Daisho opens a labyrinth to aid his feud with Aten Aurelius. That didn't go out too well for anybody. Machiel manipulates fate to awaken the bleeding phoenix when Daisho opens this labyrinth, and Machiel's actions accelerate the ascension of Lindon and Aten, influenced by Cyril and Osriel, respectively, which is something we didn't get into last time, but Cyril's continued search for Osriel and the Abaddon's frustrations with them. Lindon is imprisoned by the Skysworn due to his path of black flame. Aten, Yaren, Orthos, Little Blue, Fisher Gesha follow Lindon through prisons to continue his training. Lindon, now a low gold, duels Jai Long and loses his arm, while Aten kills Jai. Red Moon Hall attacks the Black Flame Empire, breaking Yaren's Blood Shadow Seal. Lindon's team is picked up by Skysworn. He gets a new arm, incorporating the hunger binding created by good old Fisher Gesha. I wouldn't say at the behest of Yaren, but I think because of Yaren. Yaren, as you mentioned before we started recording, kind of lives by her convictions, and this is something she must do. So Lindon joins her because I think he sees the wisdom in Yaren's decision. Now, whether it is a wise decision, we shall see. But
right. From
my perspective, Lindon thinks he sees the wisdom in her decision. So they join up with Skysworn. All hell breaks loose, and Yaren's uninvited guest breaks away from her, separates from her, but then she masters it. And we have the best part of last week, Lindon confronting Aten on kind of using him as a means to an end a little bit. Or a lot of it. Depending on your perspective.
Yeah.
A lot of it would be the right perspective, because the guy loses an arm. And where we pick up this week is Lindon getting an arm back, although not necessarily one that he can control.
He has an arm back, but does he really?
The fan art I saw kind of depicted it as I would imagined. So it's an arm that's better than any prosthetic we'd find in the real world. And yet it kind of has a mind of its own.
Right.
That you need to master.
It's almost like Nightblood.
So
without the
potato.
Without the dialogue.
Right. Yes. Oh, it would be so annoying if you had Nightblood as an appendage. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
It's just these unctions. They're not even words. It's just like feed.
Yeah.
What do you do
Yeah.
while you sleep? Do you like how do you tie it to somewhere and hope that it can't break loose?
Well, you hope that it sleeps when you sleep. That's nice enough
You hope.
to rest from punching evil.
You hope. Let's start off by unpacking what you mentioned a moment ago before we started recording about Maciel and Serial and
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in the greater universe that is Cradle. You were starting to unpack that, and then I hit record to cut you off. So let's open that up first and hear what you got thinking, rolling around up there with your little marbles.
You mean big marble?
You've only got one up there?
You got two brains?
Yeah, the reptilian brain and the conscious brain.
Ah, excellent. Well, the one I'm using right now is just the one that's in between my two ears. But what I thought was interesting, and this has been a theme throughout all three, now 4 books, and theme is maybe not the right word for it,
Plot devices?
is Suriel looking for Osriel.
Yep.
And then her having to play this delicate balance with trying to find Osriel because I think she thinks Osriel has a point, or she trusts him in whatever he's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then saving face before the Abaddon and Maciel specifically, where she's playing. I don't want to say she's playing both sides because that seems a little bit more nefarious than I think this whole thing is. Assessing Suriel from what little I know of her. Maciel here, what stood out to me, to get to your question, what stood out to me is Maciel here changes fate.
Yeah,
He
it's
tinkers with fate.
It's like a very quick moment, but yeah, talk to us about that.
In this world, it seems to me that fate would be something that is an immovable force. You're duty bound, and your faith is to do X. But then at the same time, you have Lindon, who, against all odds, and against the fate that his clan and his family thought he was destined for, achieves really great things.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get to the book titled Underlord, surprise, surprise, it's about Lindon, so guess who's an Underlord?
Whoa, hey, reading ahead here.
And then we have this thing. We have this court that controls these worlds called the Abaddon. We have this Maciel guy. And here, in a quick moment, he seems not only to tempt fate, but to change it. And that actually helps Lindon and Yaren.
Why do you think it helps Lindon and Yaren with what he did?
Doesn't it help them achieve their goals in the sacred arts? It kind of sets them up to take the next steps. Now, he's probably thinking something else. Maciel, right? Maciel's upset with Serial.
Well, it looks pretty clear to me that Maciel's going directly against what Serial did when she interacted with Lindon, because in their quick conversation, there's clearly some tension between Maciel and Serial, and then Maciel wakes up the Bleeding Phoenix, which is not surface level's not helpful to Lindon and Yaren. Sure, long term, suffering produces growth, right? But in the short term, this is causing them a lot of trouble.
Well, yeah, and the world is thrown into turmoil, right? It's not like he hands out free candy and, a coupon to the next ascension, but he sets into motion things that ultimately help them, even though he probably wants to. Well, I don't know what he wants. I haven't read far enough to make any guesses that I'll stand by. But it just seems him playing with fate does put Lindon and Yaren on a path that will ultimately help them grow.
Yeah, I mean it will. It's progression fantasy, so it will help them grow, but it does turn it up a notch because dread gods now exist on our purview, and monarchs have to fight together to just simply drag them away, but they're not defeatable. So these two characters, Lindon and Yaren, are in the gold still, for those who haven't been here in a while, it's copper, iron, jade, and that was the perceived ranking system until Lindon got out, and then it was there's golds, there's low golds, there's high golds, there's true golds, and now we've seen there's underlords, and there's archlords, and there's monarchs, and there's heralds, and there's sages. There's a whole wide world out here, but like Lindon and Yaren are low gold and high gold. Monarchs at the top of this food chain, and even they can't defeat dread gods. That's why I was just questioning. Yeah, in the long run, sure, it does help them because, I mean, they don't die in book 4, right? So, but also it doesn't help them in the short term because it's hard to deal with.
Well, now that's my answer to your question. Is what stood out to me.
Yeah, okay.
That stood out to me. That seemed like an interesting little thing. Thinking about this episode, I was like, oh, that's kind of a thing that happened.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Did you find it enjoyable or distracting or neutral that we focused pretty heavily on Yaren's backstory in this book?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool. I liked hearing about Yaren's backstory, getting a little bit of her history. I thought that was neat. Knowing more about the uninvited guest was very cool. I felt like it was resolved really quickly. I mean, we've been with the uninvited guest for 4 books now, so we get the backstory of it, and then it gets resolved in the same book, which I'm not making a value statement about it. That's just what happened. But the story itself, her backstory, I thought was cool. I enjoyed hearing about it because I've been with Lindon through, again, 4 books. We know his story. Yaren is his sidekick, but kind of protector, kind of big sister.
Mm-hmm.
And he's where he's at primarily because of Yaren. And now we get to learn a little bit about her. We don't learn a lot, but the fact that we get to at least understand where this guest came from and see her beat it, I thought that was cool. I'll take it.
What are your speculations about this uninvited guest now that she's manifested herself?
Well, that's a good question. Now that she's mastered it or has some control of it, I don't know if she's mastered
some
it
control is more fair.
I think it's going to be an extension of her, not as in it's going to become part of her soul or something, but it's going to be something that she can maybe send out from herself. It'll be like an avatar.
Mm-hmm.
If that's even
that works. Avatar is like a representation of yourself.
Well, this is silly, but the thing that came to my head, the image that came to me, was from the last Terminator, where Sarah Connor comes back, and the new Terminator, he divides himself into 2 Terminators essentially.
That's the gist of what we see here at the end.
Yeah, so that continues, is my guess.
It does.
It doesn't. She doesn't go to school, and her avatar doesn't, become a chef, and then they visit each other. Going to be part of her.
Well, they could send her to school because she has said a few times that she's illiterate. So.
Well, I'm talking about the avatar, but yes, Yaren should definitely go to school.
Well, we should send both of them to school.
That's silly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that could be another series.
No.
An offshoot.
No.
Maybe there could be a little novella in between.
No.
Where Yaren goes to gets her
Slava.
GED. She gets her GED.
No.
Meets a guy.
No.
Lives in a
No
trailer.
one wants to read that. You want to read young adult high school drama where Yaren has to, deal with the woes of kids hitting puberty and teachers treating her like an idiot because she's illiterate and her having to learn Spanish?
Half of that sounds interesting.
Oh my gosh.
The whole teenage angst and high school drama does not.
Yaren will get put in prison before that.
Right, because she'll just cut off the bully's
head. Yeah, she'll cut a Luddite.
Yeah.
So
that I read about. That's why it should be a small novella.
It's okay. Well, you can write a letter to Will and see what he says.
Maybe I'll write some fan fiction.
Oh, you know what? If you did, I would read it just for the lulz.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be anywhere close to adult fiction, teenage angst, high school drama. It'd just be what you get from me, only me controlling Yaren
Right.
in a murder. It's Carrie. It's Carrie
There it
meets
is.
high school. Only Carrie has a sword. Not telekinesis, but a
Well,
sword.
she doesn't just have a sword. She has swords poking out of her back. And you're looking at fan art. Have you seen that Yaren's gold signs are these swords coming out of her back?
I've seen like 3 pictures of Yaren, and I think I saw swords somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Gold signs are the sign that you've hit gold. So like Jai Long's is that he has a partial serpent face, which is why he covers himself up. And then Yaren's she has swords in her back.
That sounds uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now, did they grow out of her?
Yeah.
Like, oh.
But that's because she's part of this. She's part of the sword school. She's the disciple of the sword sage. So her gold sign is, and honestly, it took my second read through to understand like what is a gold sign. But it's when you hit gold, there's a sign that physically changes an attribute or feature of your person. And so for Jai Long, it's his face, which is why he covers himself up. And for some people, it's just your eyes, and some people, it's whatever. For Yaren, she got swords coming out of her back, and that will continue to happen as she powers up, which ends up looking pretty cool, actually.
All right, well, riddle me this. Jai Long, snake face.
Snake face.
Didn't he get his face all screwed up because of a remnant?
Yes, but that's because he absorbed the remnant. Not
okay.
because he fought a remnant, which sounds like the distinction you're asking about.
I guess I was, but then I realized I was confused.
So
I remember
as
now.
entertaining as these books are, there are a few times where it's like not clear because you're like, oh, his face, and there's a remnant or a remnant. Yeah, okay. And you're like, oh, it like probably slashed his face, even though you read the words or you listen to the words, and then you go through and you're like, that doesn't sound right. So that's why it's like it took me a second read through to really understand gold signs.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a little interesting.
That's why he was excommunicated from his clan, because they were like, hey,
right,
you're
ugly.
No, you weren't supposed to take a remnant from another path. You were supposed to take a remnant from one of our old people who was supposed to die so that you stay in the path and it's as pure as can be. But he took another remnant because he needed to protect his sister.
Yeah, I remember this. Okay. It's all
and
coming back.
That's when
to
he
me.
got excommunicated, where they're like, look, you were our star pupil, but now you're a piece of shit, and you're trash.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of racism,
that all makes sense.
Because that's what this is kind of like. That's the equivalent of this, right? Like, you're purposely excommunicating someone because they didn't follow, and it's not racism because it's not a race, but like pathism.
Classism.
Pathism. It's not all right, well, classism's fine too, whatever. But like, it's classism and racism combined, right? Because it's like, this is a martial arts story, and the reason he was excommunicated was because he didn't pick a certain path, because he was currently doing the honorable thing. But my reason I bring that up is we see in the second half of this book, when Lindon and Orthos go join the Skysworn, that they're regularly treated like the outliers. They're second-class citizens, like racism does, or classism. Like, I use racism because I think it's more, there's more vitriol in the people coming against them than classism. Where with classism, it's usually just like, ugh, you Luddite, and people look down on them and they move along. But with racism, people like really go at you.
I suppose it can be both.
It's like a combination, right? It's like the child of a hybrid or something.
I guess caste systems in certain countries.
Okay, caste, yeah.
If you're a lower caste, you're garbage. Forget not looking at you. You'll be treated like you're garbage actively and persecuted actively in times. But whatever, point taken. Which brings up very interesting things that Orthos does, like chomp on people's shields and tells Lindon to grow a spine.
Again.
I mean, the first time was funnier when he goes, what kind of soulsmith builds spines?
Right. Orthos never repeats himself. He just uses other dragon quotes.
Yes. Orthos was fun. I always enjoy me some good, angry, old man dragon turtles.
Love a curmudgeon.
Especially if he's funny and
gotta be funny.
what he says is true.
Yes.
Like, if you're just a curmudgeon because you're an old, sad sack of shit, nobody cares. But if you're a little bit of a ordinary guy and you're a little sarcastic and you grumble, but what you have to say is half the time is at least partially meaningful, people can at least get something out of it. I'll enjoy it half that time.
Well, and it goes to you've brought this up a few times in the last, I don't know, I'll call it 5 episodes, about like the science of humor and the, how you need a straight man for humor. Lindon's the straight man, and Orthos is the wild one, chomping on things and doing random crazy stuff. And then Lindon's like, apologies, gratitude, my sincerest, whatever.
Lindon is the perfect straight man because he is so self-deprecating already. And not in any funny way. You're not like, he's making fun of himself. Yeah, Lindon, you are X or something. Yeah. He's a washcloth. But he is the perfect straight man because you can act wild, air quotes wild, and say stuff like Ortho says to get a reaction, or just to see us as the audience seeing Lindon's reaction. That's the funny thing. It's not that Ortho's eating somebody's shield, although that's funny too. I still think the funniest thing that Ortho has done so far was in Black Flame, where he's walking around the house where Jailong's sisters is, just knocking shit over and like breaking door trusses. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, who's gonna pay for that? And that's never mentioned again. Like, Jailong doesn't bring that up. He's like, yeah, thanks for saving my sister, but you destroyed my house, so I'm gonna cut your fucking hand off.
Well, they're clearly not going to live there again, so what do they care?
Clearly, after Orthos destroys their house, nobody's gonna live there.
Well, I don't think it was even their house. I think they were like in passing. They were like traveling, because at that point, Jailong was like working with Jai Daisho and performing the attack on the Orthos, or not the Orthos, the Aurelius clan, and his sister was kind of a kidnapped person. So what do they care? It's not their house. They're in some 2-star hotel.
Doesn't take away from the fact that I would have brought it up if I was Jailong.
If you were Will Wight, you would just keep writing in like, Ethan got another bill in the mail.
It'd be a really boring slice of life. Ethan doing laundry for a chapter.
And then taxes.
Like grumbling about death and taxes. Speaking of death, who almost dies?
Well, I mean, until Yaren got a hold of her uninvited guest, they were at risk. She was at risk, and Mercy was at risk.
Yeah, all of them. And the 1,000-mile cloud crashing, and Cassius and Yaren looking like their bones are twisted the wrong way, and they're all beat up. What did we say last episode? It kind of seems like it's an interlude.
Right.
So there's action there, and there's the duel, and then the Blood Phoenix and everything. So it's not that slow. I stand by what I said last episode, but there's a lot of stuff that actually does happen. Like, all of them almost die at least twice. And this is no longer, it's training and Lindon screaming because he's behind a door and there's whatever those things are trying to eat
snake
him.
Things.
Those snake things. And then him beating himself up doing the Black Flame stuff and him getting hurt during training. And there's the fights where he ends up actually killing Jailong's friend. So all those things are, yes, maybe even death-defying for somebody like Lindon because he was only a jade at that time. My point is, in this book, Skysworn, there's a lot of times that they face death, and for real reasons. Again, it's not training. It's not just a little skirmish with the clan. Full-on duels and fights with dread gods and bleeding phoenixes and what's that guy? The guy who started all this shit.
Jai Daisho?
Jai Daisho, and that guy. Thank you. So maybe a more exciting book than we originally thought, but it still seems like it was the end of Black Flame and the beginning of Ghostwater pulled out from each other and made into an interlude.
And I think I mentioned this last episode of how the book is a lot better than I remember it being. It's just kind of forgettable because it feels like an interlude. And it might be because it just moves too quick. Because it's boom, fight, boom, new arm, boom, Skysworn, boom, bleeding phoenix, boom, done. That's it. That's the book.
Yeah.
And so you're like, what happened? Well, a lot of things happened, to your point, right? But we didn't get to sit in any of those moments, really.
Like we did in Black Flame. Black Flame was a lot of sitting.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if it's simply because Will Wight was developing his authorship chops, where he's like, hey, how do I make a book feel weighty with like Black Flame, where it's like, hey, they're struggling and they're suffering and they're whatever, and then like, okay, how do I speed up the pacing? And then he writes, this is literally just conjecture. I no proof, and I've done no research on this for Skysworn. And then it's like, oh well, Skysworn is now too short, right? And so he has a book that has decent pacing, and then he has one that's like, yeah, you covered a lot of bases, but like, it's kind of a forgettable book.
Yeah. Again, as we said in the previous episode, doesn't take away from the book and the whole enjoyment element of it, right?
Yeah, it's still a great series.
When it was over, I was excited for Ghostwater,
Right.
which we'll be reading, and I'll be reading in full here whenever in a couple of weeks. One thing that I failed to mention early on that I wanted to tie in with the humor aspect of these books is Yaren. When Lindon gets his new arm, and it's all funky looking, right? Or badass looking, in Yaren's opinion, she is naturally delighted by the skeleton appearance of his arm.
Yes.
She was like, that's cool. You're a freak, but your freakish appendage is awesome to fight things with and kill things. And you're like, thanks, Yaren. Okay. Yaren being Yaren.
Orthos, too. He was like, you'll scare them.
What endears me to her. Oh, yeah, that's right. In that moment, this is something else I want to talk about. In that moment, they have a moment, Yaren and Lindon. She bids him goodbye. She continues forward in her intent to join the Skysworn. And Lindon is committed to staying. And this is the first time where his internal dialogue, his back and forth, isn't as wishy-washy anymore. He stays true to what he thinks is right, which at that moment is staying with Ethan and seeing this thing through. She does not berate him like she usually does. She says, all right, well, I'm going to go. You do what you got to do. She still says it like Yaren would, but a little softer nonetheless. That kind of ends it for a little bit, for a chapter or two, I think, or at least, a good number of pages. And I thought that was a touching moment. It was a pleasure to read it. I was like, oh, okay. This might be where they, at least for a while, part ways. And I was kind of content with that. I'm like, oh, we might not see Aaron for a book or two, or for a half a book or something. So seeing that Lindon decides with a half-grown freakish appendage to go fight with Yaren, oh, okay, of course he does. Of course he follows Yaren because he likes Yaren. I don't mean like likes. I think he just really enjoys her company. He's grown attached to her in this moment in the story. I think he views her as a true companion.
Yeah. Do you feel like the moments, those touching moments between Ethan and Lindon, Lindon and Yaren, Lindon and Orthos even, right? Like Lindon and Fisher Gesha. Do you like them? Would you like to see more of them? Or are they just kind of like, all right, let's move on?
No, I like them. If they're done right, done well, and I think they are when Will Wight does them here, I want to see more of them. It shows that the characters are growing together. The group is fostering more and more cohesion, that they're becoming more cohesive. Their love for each other and their loyalty is growing. It's nice to have those kind of moments where they're told to you. Because often you want to see things shown, not told. A lot of exposition in a book like this, it will throw off the pace. But for them to have a moment of dialogue that's longer than just two quips of Aaron and a bunch of mumbling and grumbling from Lindon, it's like, oh, you both are growing. Like, Lindon's no longer mumbling, and Yaren's just not like, shut up, Lindon. They both have a fondness for each other, this juncture of the story, and the dialogue shows it.
All right. Makes sense.
Knowing that our differences about what we like in storytelling and like the particular differences, not general stuff, but we have very particular views of what we appreciate about stories, the type of stories that we are drawn to. Did you enjoy those kind of moments? Do you like that?
Yeah, I think that the series as a whole needs more of them, because I think that we start to appreciate. Now, I don't think it needs as many in the first 2 books or 3 books, right? But definitely in this second series of books, if I can call it that, because like 1, 2, and 3, we're really getting established. We're starting to understand the characters. I think that now 4, 5, and 6, we really should have more moments like this because it offers the audience, us, the character development that everyone wants to see in stories.
Let's keep moving forward here towards the end of the book. Ethan reminds Lindon and Yaren that he still intends to take them all the way to the top. He lets Lindon view his vision and his Abaddon bead, which was from an ascendant ancient ancestor known as, surprise, surprise, Azrael. And Azrael's recorded message shows them the nature of Cradle within the universe and the worlds that the Abaddon care for. Azrael shares the pain of dying worlds, which he himself feels over and over and over again, because these things happen in perpetuity, apparently. There's cycles to them. And Azrael wants to, the way I remember it, stop this. He reveals that he wants them to join him. This group is now going to be independent of the Abaddon, and their mission is going to be to save dying worlds that the Abaddon has abandoned.
So, Azrael in the real world doesn't really happen much in the series, primarily because he's been in hiding. So I think it was book 11 and 12. It's literally the end of the series where we actually get to meet the Azrael that we've heard about. But there will be continued clues because Ethan is an ancestor scattered throughout Cradle that we will start to piece together, and maybe that's too many spoilers for the folks, but I think it answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. We say that in the intro. But I just wanted for myself to know when we finally get to have a bigger piece of Azrael. That's a good enough answer for me.
Good. So we see a new character introduced, Mercy Akura. She is someone big and important. Someone is trying to get her assassinated. She's even mentioned when Ethan goes to talk to the Akura family. And the, how did they phrase it? The forgotten daughter, the daughter that fell from grace. What was it?
The wayward daughter?
Wayward daughter, was that what it was?
I'm guessing.
The forgotten daughter, or the daughter that fell from grace or whatever. So it's like Narugwe got a message from the Akura clan to put their daughter in harm's way, and that's that. And he won't be punished for that. And so he throws Yaren and Lindon into the same group because he's like, well, you'll be understaffed, but you'll deal with it. What are your first impressions with Mercy here? Because she's a totally new character. What are the things you noticed about her? What are your likes and dislikes? Let's start there.
What I remember specifically about her is that her family's trying to kill her off in a way that's expedient and doesn't really maybe dirty their hands, and she's out of the way. And so I was like, oh, well, that's horrible. And naturally, for the Skysworn, Lindon and Yaren are dispensable too.
Right.
She heals...
the kid that started the fight.
Yes, she heals the kid that started the fight. That's the guy that Orthos pummels, right?
Well, Lindon pummels him, but Orthos eats his shield.
Right. Fun times. Yeah, so she gives him a pill and heals him. The other thing that stood out was when people hear her name, everybody runs.
Right.
Even Orthos.
Yep.
Wherever she is, she seems to be special. And maybe that's why her family's trying to kill her off, because she's trouble. Or she has some kind of power. Maybe she has something similar like Yaren, like an uninvited guest, or an uncontrollable power. I don't know. I'm just totally guessing.
Right. Yeah, so Mercy will be around in book 5. Yaren and her are 2 of the cast that are split off together to have to work together and do things. Lindon and Orthos are split off into their own little group. And you're not entirely wrong with Mercy. She does have a unique power because she's part of the Akura clan. A few quick fun facts about the Akura clan. The Akura clan's naming structure is like virtue based. So there's Akura Mercy, Akura Justice, Akura Malice, like virtue and vice based. Akura Fury. So that's their naming structure. Akura is the surname, and then the first names are these different virtues and vices, which is kind of fun. Akura Malice.
Yeah, well, that's why she shows mercy to the kid who gets pummeled.
Well, we get a
No?
full. That's who she is as a character, but she's not just Mercy. How do I say this? Mercy does get a full arc, but because she is a daughter of Akura Malice, who's the monarch of the Akura family,
Okay.
she's the favorite daughter. There's also Akura Charity, who's her aunt.
So, favorite daughter gets to be killed off? Oh, Malice. Akura. Okay. And there, it was a silly question. Why did I even ask?
Akura Malice's favorite daughter, Akura Mercy, is put under the pressure cooker of sorts for reasons that we will find out. But I will let you in on a little secret here. The Akura clan has this like library of magic tomes. And so a lot of them are able to go into the place with the magic tomes, and they get to read their magic tome, and then they learn those powers, right? But there's a certain book called the Book of Shadows, which Malice herself wrote, and everyone who is coming of age is allowed to try out to earn that book, to be their style, their path. No one has achieved it except for Mercy, which is why she's the favorite daughter. However,
Okay.
like every royal family, there are butting of heads and differing desires. And that's just what happens to
Jealousy, maybe?
No, just differing desires. And that leads to her current circumstances.
Interesting. Okay. Is that why Akura Mercy emerges first in that ceremony, dual race?
From the challenge course?
Yeah.
Sorta. She doesn't emerge first simply because she's nobility. She emerges first because she's been trained by basically the leading powerful being that is not a dread god in Cradle.
Right. Well, that's what I was getting at, not the royalty part.
Oh, okay.
Because she read the book, that helped her emerge first in this race.
Yes, but I didn't explain it right based on how you just said it back to me. She didn't finish the book. Each chapter is like a technique, and you can only learn one technique at a time, and until you master it, you can't go to the next one. You can do a short-term power-up of sorts to like jump ahead at the risk of being left and caught in the book for eternity.
So she emerges as number one, partly because she has read enough of that book to learn the techniques and has been taught by a master, which puts her ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, just to put it simply, for if you're having trouble following along as an audience, the most powerful person in the world is Akura Mercy's mother, and when that's the case, you get extra special training, you get extra special resources. Her aunt is a sage, Aunt Charity, Akura Charity. There's a lot to be had when you're born into a powerful family like that, and you just get legs up. The thing is, there's also infighting within the Akura family as a whole, and the siblings don't like Mercy either. So,
well, that's typical. But Lindon comes in fourth. That's nice for Lindon, because 2 years ago, he would have never imagined to be anywhere near where he is now.
Yeah, which is really good. But why don't you just remember a second how Lindon crossed the finish line?
Well, if memory serves me right, bleeding and battered and being carried in the mouth of a giant sarcastic turtle.
Yeah, that's precise.
That's a thing that happened.
So,
which he probably didn't imagine would have been his lot in life 2 years ago either.
That's okay. I mean, I'll give you that. That's fine. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because I just remember Lindon fighting with his family that he should have
a quarter piece of fruit. Yeah.
Now he comes in fourth at the logoed race.
You think he'll ever see his family again?
I could be completely wrong, but since you're asking the question, and I kind of have what I think is a 60-40 chance.
Yeah.
And I think 60% no.
That's wrong, but I like your guess.
Okay.
And
All right.
the only reason it's wrong is because we know that Will keeps bringing us back to this. In some of the motivation when we're seeing from Lindon's point of view, Lindon remembers what Serial told him about saving Sacred Valley. And so part of Lindon's journey is to go back to Sacred Valley at some point.
I would have thought there's a possibility that Will Wight is setting up Lindon to do something else. Yes, all these things are happening, but if Maciel has changed things once or twice, and we don't know how many times, once at least here, and Lindon and Yaren and Ethan are going to the heights of the Sacred Arts, maybe Sacred Valley will be laid to waste, and Lindon will have to go somewhere else.
Will's the kind of guy who likes to have his cake, eat it too, and then have a second dessert just for fun.
Oh, well, where does that leave us?
We get everything.
Okay. Well, there you go. So we get the top of the Sacred Arts and possibly maybe saving Sacred Valley and all the douchebags that live in it.
Well, and what you said a minute ago, the destruction of it.
Okay, cool.
You get all of it. You get all of it.
Oh, now, okay. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Which, it's a fun adventure story. So
it's 4 books in, and what's been deemed by us and by some of the other people, specifically the Reddit ranters that I mentioned earlier, as a mediocre book, it's pretty damn good. So I'm enjoying the story all the way through. All the way to the end.
Of the Sacred Arts.
Of the Sacred Arts.
That's
of
right.
the books about the Sacred Arts. All right. So it seems that destruction is going to be faster than... Remember when Serial told Lindon that it would be 30 years before the Dread Gods descended on Sacred Valley?
Yep.
Ethan thinks it might be sooner. Thanks to Jai Long's machinations and douchebaggery, it might be sooner that this happens. And Ethan senses that fate was twisted to raise the Phoenix. We have come full circle now.
Yes. When the Abaddon begin messing with planets, sometimes goes well and sometimes doesn't, depending on the attitude of the Abaddon. We'll leave it like that. But yes, it's being sped up. And Lindon's not ready. So here we go.
So I guess that's why Osriel's doing what he's doing. Because he has broken away from the Abaddon.
Yeah, Osriel didn't approve of the bureaucracy of the Abaddon. Because it doesn't really matter what level you get to. It seems to be that there's always some bureaucracy.
Naturally.
So
that seems like par for the course for the real world.
Facts.
And this Cradle world as well. I've been in leadership roles in a variety of different organizations and school groups, clubs, everything from the popular to the mundane. And it's always bureaucracy. Now, some of it was fun and people were great and we had a good time putting on events and hanging out and doing all the stuff that you would do. I'm speaking specifically about college student groups.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other times you wanted to claw your own eyes out because it was so mind-numbingly frustrating. And same with organizations that you and I both know. Different echelons of them we were part of to some extent, even as community leaders, you would say. And again, that same mind-numbing dumbassery that just squashes progress and it keeps everything in the same mundane bureaucratic cycle. That happens in organizations and entities that rule the world too.
Yes, it does. But the thing is, they don't rule the world. They're like the police mixed with the Illuminati.
Oh,
the Abaddon.
So like the real world. I'm
Sure.
kidding.
Sure.
I promise you I have not been co-opted by any of the TikTok conspiracy theory channels that I follow and watch.
I don't believe you.
You don't? I'll send you some. It'll make you think. I'm kidding. I'm really kidding. I don't believe in any conspiracy
But
theories.
check the show notes just in case for secret messages.
I believe the government is batting 1,000 and always tells us the truth.
Yeah.
So where are we at, Jonathan? Help us begin to descend our cloud here.
Bring the Abaddon back down to the ground level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ethan got ousted from the family.
Yeah, and it seems that he has pushed Cassius's last button. Everything that he's done so far, the money he has spent on training Lindon and Yaren, the risks he has taken with Lindon that ended up Lindon losing an arm, and the attack that the Aurelius family experienced in the previous book, that attack, and then what's happening now. I think Cassius blames Ethan for it because if Ethan wasn't, in Cassius's view, such a flippant leader, maybe Jai Long wouldn't have a reason to go to the labyrinth and dredge up, pun intended, some dread gods. Cassius thinks he's playing the only hand he has to save the Aurelius family, the Aurelius clan.
Yeah, there's certainly some contention between Cassius and Ethan on the path forward. Cassius is more conservative on it. Ethan is more liberal in his decisions. And Ethan wants to be proactive, and Cassius wants to hedge his bets to be reactive and defensive. And so Cassius, being the son of the elders, went and had Ethan removed. So,
but I don't think that matters.
Why is that?
Because I think Ethan being Ethan, number one, but he has the marble from Serial, just like Lindon, a recording from Osriel calling him to a specific path. And if he's committed to that path, whether or not he's patriarch, to a guy like Ethan, I think, frankly, is irrelevant. I'm going to do something else. I got a turtle and 2 disciples. I'll see you guys later. Oh, and I also have the daughter of the most powerful person in this part of the world, so I'll see you all later.
Right. Well, the thing is, you don't just ditch your last name, your family clan name. So this is not the last of that part of the story. I'll say that.
Okay.
For better and worse.
But if it was, since we're playing Slava Guesses, what happens next?
Finally, the game that I've been trying to play for
79 episodes.
78, 79 episodes.
I think Ethan won't be stopped by this.
And you would be correct.
I'm happy to hear you say that.
Yes.
Again, because I'm often correct.
Well, you're often something.
Aren't we all?
Yes, we're often something. And on that note, that is today's episode of SideQuest. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on the next SideQuest.
And if you find yourself bleeding and battered, may a turtle carry you over the finish line.
Is that what you're going to tell Spencer next time when he comes on?
If Spencer needs to hear it, I'll be his orthos too. You know what, Spencer? We love you. Peace out, people. I'm done.
Did you take that one out of his playbook?
Right. It's a thing. I think it should be stopped. We should stop doing this thing, but it's a thing that happens with us.
All right. Well, stay tuned next time when Spencer joins us to discuss and recap Skysworn, Book 4 in Cradle.